Hi everyone, I'm Ben, and this is The Human Artist. I've been teaching for 20 years now, and this video is for anyone who's interested in joining like-minded artists who want to put their imagination and energy to creative, constructive, and positive use. If you want to learn more about understanding our visual world and how to harness your innate gift as a human being to enjoy, understand, and yes, create art, you are in the right place, my friend. My lessons aim to provide bite-sized concepts that dramatically increase the effectiveness of your art. And when you start to use these tools together, the results stack exponentially instead of incrementally. So like, subscribe, and contribute to our little club in the comments. Also, be sure to keep watching to see how you might be able to submit your artwork for critiques, overpaints, or workshops. Together is how we get things done. Things get interesting. Things sometimes get weird. So we're going to do it together. Now, before we begin, remember, you really should try and clear your thoughts and adopt an open mind or a growth mindset, however you want to phrase it. You should detach yourself from this idea that while you're learning, you need to create this perfect product while you're learning, and instead get lost in the discovery of the process itself. This, of course, is to keep people from running in circles of frustration when all they really have to do is just take one step forward. It's corny, but obstacles and challenges really are where we get the most growth. Having said that, the title of this video is outlandish, as it describes using mind control techniques in your art. But that's exactly what we're going to do. Specifically, we're going to have a conversation based on the concept of what's called value. If that sounds, disappointing, or confusing at first, that's great news for me, because this concept is beautiful. It's simple, and you can instantly start seeing results in your own work and your own ideas, how you think of things. And like most simple concepts, the more you practice, the more you reflect, the more you experiment, the more discoveries you are going to make. And that's what shapes your path as an artist. So, let's get started. So, value. The whole secret to this is value and organizing them. And what values are, what value refers to, is simple. It's light and dark. It's how light areas and dark areas compare to one another. It's always in a context. Something is light or dark because of what it's next to in an image. That's it. So that's what value means. How light something is, how dark something is compared to something else. Values organize your work. It's not an opinion, it's how we work. It's how our biology works. It's how our perception works. It's how our brain works. So whether or not you are controlling or aware of what your values are doing in your images, they're still doing their job. They're still communicating. They're influencing your viewers. And most of the time, it's too much of a chance that you're going to make some unnecessary, strange result if you are not in charge of what's going on with your values. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So we know that values are light and dark. We know that values organize your image. We're going to see what that means as we go on. I'm just saying it for now, but we're going to actually do it. What values do when they're next to each other, and there's always values up against each other, is they create this thing called contrast. Contrast just means difference. So things can be very different or similar or anywhere in between. So, for example, this black and white. One's very dark, one's very light. They're very different. This creates what's called high contrast. So when we say this has a high contrast, it means they're very different. I hope this is easy so far. This is simple stuff, but it's so good. All right, these two values, they're kind of dark, kind of middle, compared to each other, but they're very similar. This is low contrast. So now we know values, now we know contrast, we know high contrast, we know low contrast. So what? What do we do? Here's where it starts to get interesting. Contrast controls your attention. Value contrast in particular controls your attention. This is mind control. If you organize your images consciously into areas of light, medium, and dark, you are going to communicate your ideas very clearly. How you do that is up to you. If the light, medium, and dark are a small range, so it's a very low contrast image, or if you have a wide range, or if the dark and the middle are similar and the light is very light. All this is still, this does not inhibit your freedom whatsoever. In fact, it's the opposite, because you're no longer at the mercy of whatever random things are happening in your picture that you're not aware of. So low contrast, when things are very similar, that gives your eyes, your attention, your brain areas of rest. When things are high contrast, they demand your attention. They demand your focus. If you have something that's everything, the whole thing is high contrast. The whole thing is low contrast. They kind of cancel everything out, and you get this unfocused feeling from it. Okay? I hope you see where this is leading. If not, we're about to get into it right now. Mind control time. I put it in the title. It wasn't just a trick to get people to click on it. We're going to test it right now, okay? And then we're going to do it. All right, so check this out. Here's a high contrast image of some wonderful shapes. Look at that. I want you, if you're still watching, I challenge you to pick out the shape that I intended for you to consider the main focus of my picture. Go. No matter what, here's how it works. You pick 100 people, there's going to be a lot of different answers. There's going to be people who pick their favorite shape. There's going to be people who don't pick any. There's going to be people who pick a shape because it's big. There's going to be people who pick a shape because maybe it's the shape you would least expect, or it's in the middle, or it's it reminds you of something else. There's going to be so many reasons if you actually follow through, and I hope you did. I hope you tried to pick a shape. But like, this is all high contrast, and the shapes are kind of spread out, so it gives me this unfocused feeling. Same exact shapes, but now I picked 3 different values, the background and 2 different shades for the shapes. And they're all very similar. We still have the same problem. And you might have more confusion and more mixed reactions from your viewers now if they're to pick one. They say, wait a minute, the shape I was thinking of, it's darker. Does that mean it's further away? Does that mean are the lighter shapes holes? Is the background the solid? There's just more confusion. And at the very least, we're not going to have 100% agreement on what you think I think the main picture is. So if I was trying to make a shape stand out the most or be the main idea, I failed because it created confusion, if that's not what I was trying to do. All right, so here's the part. In one moment, you are going to know exactly which shape, and I'm going to mind control you to it. Even if you try not to look at the black dot, your eyes are almost pulled to it as a magnet because it's very different than everything else. There's a high contrast. Everything is this middle gray, this middle value. The black is very different. And to make it stand out more, I put the very brightest part of the whole image right next to the very darkest part. Keep in mind, this is grossly exaggerated and oversimplified, but I wanted to make the example simple because this happens all the time. You might spend 2 days, 3 days, drawing the most perfect thing. Your details are all coming out. Good. Your shading, oh, it looks so good. The colors are coming out great. You got new pens, those are looking great. You get done, I don't know if this ever happened to you, it sure did to me. You get done and you look at it and you go, ooh. Or maybe the next day you come back and look at it, or you want to show it to someone and you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't look as good. What is wrong? And you might not know what is wrong with it. This leads to a couple problems. I've seen a lot of these. One, the artist might start searching for a solution to a problem that didn't exist in the first place. Maybe they change a color. Maybe they add more color. Maybe they take away color. Maybe they add more shading. They pick things that aren't the problem. They add more detail, or they take out detail. Worst case, they rip it up, or they start over. They start over or try to change it without knowing what's wrong. And oftentimes, it's an ambiguity or confusion or an awkward, unintentional contrast problem with values that happens. Either it's all mishmash, or maybe, like, say you drew this beautiful cabin in front of a mountain and there's, birds and bushes, and everyone you show the picture to says, ooh, look at that tree stump, it looks so good. And you're like, what are you talking about, the tree stump? It's like the least important part of the picture. But thank you, but the tree stump, really. Sometimes that's where the value contrast focuses on something that you don't want. Sometimes it's in an area that's of nothing. Maybe it's like an awkward little nothing area of your picture, but the contrast is so great. All right, so before I belabor that more, let's go to some real paintings. This is almost done for us. We're going to break some paintings down into light, medium, and dark. That's what we got to do. Think of your art in terms of light, medium, and dark. Make a solid decision. That's number one. Make a decision. This is going to be light. This is going to be medium. This is going to be dark. Even if it doesn't correspond with reality. Sometimes, especially if it doesn't correspond with reality. Because reality isn't set up that way. Sometimes it's just bombarding you with all of this different information, color and light all at once. And it looks good to your eye, but to put that on paper and make the illusion of an image, it doesn't work. And you're overwhelmed with the details, and the details throw everything off. So what we show you today is going to give you an option of how to work around that. All right. So anyway, I took the background of Vermeer's Girl with the Pearl Earring, and I just made it a dark. Notice I didn't make it black, because we want room to play around with details in that dark area. And if it's jet black, the only thing you can do is get lighter. So I made the background black. We can say that the figure, the girl, is a medium value. But that's not all there is, because we need light. And she does have light hitting her from a direction. So here's the basic breakdown. If you get nothing else from this video, do this. If you're doing thumbnail sketches on paper with a pencil, do this. Do 100 of them. For any project, do it 100 times. Doing it once is great. The more you work, though, the better you're going to get at this. The more natural it's going to feel. Everything is awkward and slow and tedious at first, usually. Do it 1,000 times, and then you can do it in your sleep. So break it down, and don't look. I didn't make this too detailed. I did this really fast with a mouse. I don't think I can hold it up in front of the camera. It doesn't reach. All right. So here's something we're going to get into now. You can take your values and add detail. It's easy, real easy to do on a computer because you have infinite choices in a painting program. You can add details. But if you start adding details to a picture, and I've seen this, people come up with a nice dark, medium, and light image, and then they start adding details, and it throws off the whole hierarchy of what it destroys it, because they add a lot of a ton of dark details to the lightest part of the image, or they add a bunch of light to the dark, and it just starts to blend the whole thing in, and it starts looking like a mishmash again. So what we're going to do is subdivide these three values into a light, medium, and dark in each one, so they don't cross over into each other's territories. I'll show you what I mean. So in the light areas, I added some slightly darker parts and some slightly lighter detail information. But none of these values comes close to this middle value. So even if you squint at it, all the light areas are still light, and there's no question about it. If there is, you're getting too close to each other, and you need to make definite choices. All right, I did it here with the middle values. There's a darker area of the middle values, but it's still middle value. It's still not this dark. And there's a lighter part, and we're adding in some information. Even scribbling with a mouse, it's adding information. So even though the drawing is not good, it's got something. Think of it as a study for a bigger work or a painting. This is just a study. This is not a final image. And then in the background, the black, there's the darkest dark background, there's the middle, and there's the lighter. This is hard to say without screwing up. I'll give it a shot. The lightest part of the dark value right here has to be much darker than the darkest part of the middle value. And it is. If I sample this with a brush, let's see. Oh, I thought I was in photo. No, I'm doing a slideshow. Yeah, it's dark. It's much darker. Let's go on. So yeah, we're subdividing our values. That way you can still have all the detail you want, but it won't throw off your whole image. You preserve the hierarchy of the values that you created. I love this painting by Mary Cassatt of the boat. All my students loved it too. All the classes I taught, no matter what grade level, they loved it. Adults, children. It's just so striking. All right, so here's how I broke this down. We got the dark, we got light, and we got middle. Just doing this is so useful. Getting used to doing this. And then you'll start to see it when you look up. I could decide, ooh, that would make a good image, but I'd have to make it middle. Like here's a house and some trees. Okay, I'll say the trees are dark, even though they're not. Maybe they're fall trees and they're light yellow. But that house, I'm going to make that white. It's going to be bright, bright, bright. And then the grass will be the middle. So now let's subdivide each range of values and give them details that don't hop into other categories. So now it's still dark, medium, light. And within it, there's more information. Michelangelo. So we're going to break the background into the light, these background shapes into the dark, and the figures into the middle. My lightest shades of middle value have to be darker than the darker shades of my white values when I subdivide. Because now it expands our ability to give information, flesh things out. You see some of the details of the wall. You see more details of the figures. Again, it's still very abstract and messy, but you get more definition. All right. I forgot this was in here. This is just me being a dork. The importance of high contrast in terms of stop signs. You don't want dark pink lettering on a stop sign. Even though we have the symbolism of red that we know, and we know a stop sign shape, signs should not have low contrast lettering. I thought I took that out. I'm sorry. It's dorky. All right, now we're going to get into Photoshop. And we're actually going to apply some of these things to our own ideas. We're going to apply it to what if we're out and about in the world. I hope if anyone watches this, I hope if anybody watches this and they want to do something, if they go to a restaurant, they go outside, they do something, they draw somewhere, and they do this. They break down whatever they're looking at into light, medium, and dark. And if you want, you can even do those subdividings. And if you get that far, you can think, well, what's my main subject? Because I can change my world around in my picture so that some of the highest contrast is where I want it to be. If I'm drawing a restaurant and I'm looking at that, and I have that couple right over there, and I want people to kind of focus on that, I can use values of colors that are higher contrast, maybe than what they're actually wearing to what's around them, to draw your focus. And I hope if anyone does, please email me or post something, link it. I want to see it. If anyone does this, I'm really would love to see how you're doing. And we'll talk about that at the end. But right now we gotta get into Photoshop. Let's start with this. Let's start with that. I made these very quickly. I did scribble drawings using the lasso tool. I'll show you what I mean. If you're ever just messing around, it's super easy with a computer. I just take the lasso tool, and I'm drawing with a mouse. I'm not even using my stylus right now, and it's really hard to do, but I just don't mind how it looks because I'm just playing. So I just kind of make shapes, and then I can fill them with a dark value, not black, but dark. Or maybe, sometimes I feel more comfortable starting with a medium, and then I can go lighter and darker if I want. And then I can look at it and add to it or subtract from it until it's not so random. Maybe it starts to look like something. That looks like a bird. Okay. Yeah, so that looks like a bird. So let's kind of mess with that. Yeah. So that's starting to look like a bird. Now I can, and you can, now I'll pick a lower value, and I'll see if it looks distinctively darker enough. I don't want it to look like a slightly, oh yeah, that's a definite darker shade than the middle. All right. Maybe I'll add something around the eye area here. Ooh, yes. I didn't expect to, okay, now I'm going to finish this because now it's getting, I was just scribbling. That's the thing when you're just using values, even if the drawing is terrible, your value structure is sound. So you kind of like the drawing anyway, even when it's not good. It's really fun. Maybe we'll have a fluffy belly. Oh man, yes, maybe we'll add I don't know what kind of bird this is, but it's happening. All right, maybe we'll just suggest some kooky talons here. There we go. So yeah, we're getting a little weird bird action. And all I did was a light, a medium, and a dark. Now I could go in and let's say I could add subdivide it to get details either for shading or just go into more detail. Like maybe I'll just suggest some more feathers here. And what I'll do is I'll sample the middle value and then just pick a value that's just above it, just slightly lighter. And now we have these just little details. It's kind of ridiculous actually how well it works. How these drawings that are not, you don't have to worry about how good they are. You're just really working out ideas. But then you end up kind of liking them because the values work. So they get this like little charm to them, and you start to really get into it. All right, I'll do it the same thing with the dark value. Maybe I'll, oh yeah. And just be open to ideas. Like maybe we'll have spots running down this dark area. But I'm going to keep them in the dark range. So I only make it slightly brighter. So you notice the details. Ooh. But it doesn't throw off your design. See? So now I'm just gonna maybe get some lighter values on the beak there. Yeah. And you know what? Maybe I'll throw in one for the eye just for an accent. Now I'll sample the light value and go a little bit above it. I still haven't reached the white. The awesome thing about that is since you preserve the dark, medium, and the light, and you don't touch the white and you don't touch the black, when you do use a little bit of white or black for accents, since everything else is solid, it's just like the final, it really is such a punch. The accents hit really well because you've respected the light, middle, and dark hierarchy of the picture. All right, I'll only work on this for a minute. This wasn't part of the plan, working on Birdo here. So maybe let's add some, getting into these feather details. I'll just do some kind of like stemmy suggestion. And I'll sample the middle. Just go just below it. Yep, so it's not at all in the dark range. It's way lighter than the dark, at least I think, and I can test it. Yeah, the lightest dark is still way darker. Sweet. Now I can maybe add a little suggestion of just some form and texture here of this fluffy belly and of the down, and I'll just go slightly below the light value. Let me try that again, because even if it's okay and it's within the range, sometimes you look at it and say, ooh, that's too much. You don't want it to throw it off that much, and that was kind of hitting an alarm with me. Let's try this. Yep, just enough detail, but if I squint at it, that still all registers as a light value. So yeah, squinting. You learned how to squint today. That's worth watching a video. All right, we're gonna go into a nature picture next. I did not expect to like Birdo this much. All right, so I'm going to do the inside of the beak. Whoa, no, that's the wrong value. There we go. Yes. All right. I mean, that's not a good drawing, but it was really fun to do, and it's got, oh man, shrink it down. Now I like it. I want more Birdos and more Birdos and more Birdos and more Birdos. All right, let's get rid of Birdo. Birdo's a big distraction, but I hope that demonstration helped you out a little bit for just playing around. Now let's go to this image. I made it all, it's all a very small range of values, so it's all kind of going together. There's a little bit of contrast here, but I think we could punch it up and make it much more dramatic. And there's no one right answer. So I pre-saved some selections. Let's go in here and let's pick like the car. If I make the car a dark value, no matter what, now the car is the star of the show. Even though this character's in the middle and there's this guy real close up front, the car is in front of a light background. Value contrast demands that you are going to pay attention to that. All right? So that could be intentional or not. Sometimes I see things like this, where a part that the artist, student or artist never ever intended to be the most important looking thing in the picture, like this. You have this distracting contrast on the ground, especially if it's really serving no purpose. Like there's not a giant shadow of a hand coming to pick this person up. It's just the way they colored it. So we want to be conscious. So let's select the sky. Let's decide on a solid light, middle, and dark area for this image. So let's make the sky light. I mean, we could make it, ooh, that looks cool to make it dark. But let's make it, let's say it's light. There. That's already given it some space because we have dark, we have middle, and we have light. So let's pick something. Let's make this middle figure. Far away dude. Boom. I mean, this character's already in the center of the page, so that's already going to draw attention. But they're also in front of a light background, so that's a real strong, like that's the main character. All right, last thing I want to do in Photoshop is let's take an actual image. When you're out in the world drawing, painting, working on your computer, whatever, the amount of information coming at you is can be overwhelming. So even by just taking a photo, that makes it a little more approachable. But even then, there's just so much competing information here that we're going to divide it up. And I'm going to make some decisions that it's not going to look like a photograph of this. I'm going to decide what's going to be darker, what's going to be lighter, according to what I want and according to my design. You can totally do that. I love photorealism, but this is also extreme. You can be very realistic, but tweak the image to make it something you can look at and understand. So I'm going to trim out, I'm going to take the whole ground, and I'm drawing with a mouse, so forgive me. I'm just going to, I'm going to register the ground as dark. Even though there's a lot of light and a lot of middle, I'm going to say, no, you're dark. You're dark now. Beep. All right, so that, it was already kind of a dark gray. So here, this is this dark background that's going to be this. Now I'm going to select this part here, and I'm going to decide, you can decide whichever values you want. I'm going to decide that it is a middle value, and I'm going to go a wide range here. I'm not going to keep all my values super close. And I'm going to make, instead of the rocks, I'm going to make just the water. I'm going to just suggest some of that waterfall. It's coming down from a couple spots, splitting up in a few spots. And believe, this isn't a drawing course, how to draw with a mouse. So try to suspend belief on this actually looking good. I want you to just get the concept. Now I'm going to pick a light value, not white. Beep. That's the main three values. Almost forgot some trees. So I'm just going to very rough in some basic tree trunk shapes with a mouse. I'm not going to do a full long, I'm doing like a speed thing right now. So we have our basic gray, our middle, light, and dark. And now, once we subdivide, we can get into a surprising amount of detail. I'm going to, let's see, rock formation here. And again, I'm just going quick and reckless here to give you an idea, to hopefully inspire you a little bit. Please make something better than I'm doing, and then share it so I can see what you do. And then There's a little bit of light over here. Now I'm selecting things in the dark area that are lighter. So maybe some like tree trunk highlights, if that's what you want to call whatever these things are I'm making. Pretend these are trees. Some of the stones. There we go. Then I'll sample this dark area and only go slightly lighter. There we go. Now I can go into the darker. Let's go a little darker than our dark, but not black yet. We'll use that for the cherry on the sundae. Let's see. So there are some really dark areas in these crevices in between these shelves of stone, and I'm going to exaggerate that so that some of my darkest areas are near the lightest parts to create that most contrast and focus. And then there's some darkness there. I see some darkness here. There we go. There's some darkness going up here. I'm just going to kind of use these stripy stone shelves just to suggest it. And like I said, it's not, this is a demo. I'm going to make it slightly darker. There we go. And then maybe I'll even suggest where the waterfall continues. There we go. With that, with the lighter part there. And cool. Now I can go in and let's do, maybe I could take, I didn't even get into the leaves. I could have been like, I could have focused more on the leaves instead and gone in and had fun with these shapes. There's so many good shapes in here. But again, this is a quick little demonstration, so I'm not going to do all that. Maybe some of the leaves on the trees. There we go. And then we could divide up this background too with the middle. Maybe it's kind of like this ridge over the landscape here. So we'll make this the darker, slightly darker middle. There we go. And then maybe up here, we'll add some like more tree stuff. But then you'll see a little bit of sky, and it's only going to be the slightest suggestion. It's going to be slightly lighter than the rest of it. Boom, there's our sky. And it kind of suggests this distance going off with such a small amount, so little, it suggests a lot. Now this leaves our light looking pretty flat, and that might be too much, but it starts to turn into something else completely. And it's really exciting just to see where it goes, because it almost feels like it's, the picture is making itself. Anyway, but there's things that I love about it. Maybe like something like that. And then have the water going off in the back. Yeah, let's see what that looks like. We take this color and we suggest a stream that's way more narrow, like it's going off into the distance. take this one, because it's lighter, just light enough, and it's even thinner. Or maybe we make this like the waterfalls. There we go. Kind of like that. It's a start. So that was a long one. I got a little carried away. I hope if anything else, you got the idea about seeing your subjects in terms of 3 values. You pick the values. If you want to go into more detail, you can subdivide. And if you really want to mind control someone to make sure they're paying attention to the areas you want them to just have more contrast in those areas. And in the areas where you don't want them to pay as much attention, you can still add all the detail you want, just make it low contrast. That's it. It's a good starting point, at least. If you would like your artwork featured, critiqued, overpainted, a workshop on it or something, please just post, or you just want to share. I hope everybody has a great night. It's way too late here. I gotta go to bed and get ready for work again tomorrow. I hope everybody had a great night. Thanks for everything, and good night.